What's up, everyone, and welcome to the RRBG podcast. In this episode, I talked to comedian Josh Potter. He hosts his own show, The Josh Potter Show. You can find it on YouTube, and you can catch him on the road all the time, opening up for greats like Tom Segura, Annie Letterman, and many more. We met at the Comedy Store a while back and wanted to have him on to talk a little bit about comedy. We talked a lot about the Comedy Store. We talked about mental health and what it's like suffering depression after a show and trying to deal with the move from one side of the country to another side of the country. It was a really, really fun and deep conversation. We also talk a little bit about the new Batman movie. Make sure to follow him on all the social medias at Josh_Potter. Go to his YouTube page and subscribe so you can watch the Josh Potter Show when he drops it every Tuesday. Subscribe to our page if you can. Down there, click the little follow button, subscribe button, whatever, the little heart, the little bell, all of the things. Help us get on the algorithm. They're making it worse and worse every day. And if you get a chance, go to our Patreon page. Go to patreon.com/RRBG and support the podcast. Cheers. Real quick, some business. Killcliff, thank you for sending me these. Honestly, when I am too lazy or tired to make my 45-minute cup of coffee in the morning, because it's a process. I can't have regular ass fucking K-cups or whatever they're called. But when I'm in a rush and I need to get awake, this stuff right here does the trick. So I'm going to have some. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, fuck. And it tastes good. This fucking cherry limeade. Oh, it's no sugar either, so it's not like I'm not getting diabetes out of it, which is what I'm looking for when it comes to that. I mean, it's that or cocaine, and I really don't want to do cocaine in LA anymore.
Yeah, that's a scary endeavor these days.
Yeah. But anyway, let me introduce you before we keep going. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the RRBG podcast. I'm joined today by comedian and friend, Mr. Josh Potter. How are you, brother?
Great to be on here. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it a lot.
Of course. I've been trying to, feature more comedians on the show and expand, because it's always been like brewers or fucking musicians, and that's great. I love it. I mean, that's the passion, but I also love comedy, and I've been hanging out at the Comedy Store a lot, and I now have a show at the Comedy Store with the Comedy Store Wrestling. So if anybody's watching isn't aware, that's happening. It's been fun.
I got my Ric Flair hoodie on right now.
Look at that. We got to have you on, man. We got to have you on an episode.
Hell yeah.
It's fun. It's me and Earl Skakel, and
I love Earl.
Yeah, we just have fun, but we're not trying to be too nerdy about it. We talk about what's happening, like if it's a big deal, like the pay-per-views or something like that. But we're not going to nerd out that hard.
No, yeah, I get what you're saying.
I want to eventually do a live show there. I mean, like they did, like Tony and the Store Horsemen did a while back with the Storecade. That was fun.
Yeah, they do, like they did live pay-per-view kind of things, right? Like companion sort of.
Yeah, like
broadcasts.
a watch-along.
Yeah, that's cool.
I like that idea. They also put a ring in the main room, which was I was there for that one. That was nuts.
Yeah, I remember that. That was crazy.
Most of those guys are on TV now, on TNT. They're the main competition. It's funny. I'm 40 now, and I know you watch a lot of sports.
Yeah.
And I've kind of drifted away more and more into just MMA and wrestling.
Okay.
Which kind of sucks,
What made you drift away? Just anything in particular? Or?
Yeah, I don't know. I started getting tired of the fact that the teams don't really represent the cities, Like, I like watching the World Cup because it forces the players to go to their countries and represent. You know what I mean?
Sure. Oh, you're saying the players aren't necessarily born there, so they don't have any sort of affiliation to the city and that kind of thing?
Yeah, like they're just being bought, they buy whoever they want and bring them over. I feel like I can't get behind my team or my city because who cares? They're all travelers and it's weird. I think I would be way more into like regular sports if it was everybody that's in the teams from New York, or everybody's from California. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't even have to be the city. It would just be the state.
That'd be interesting. I don't know if I would like that as in terms of like, I'd be like, man, Texas sure has a lot of good football. I mean, they always win football or, of those. Man, Florida's kicking our ass.
Yeah, it would make it less competitive, I guess, maybe. Or maybe it would motivate other states to get their shit together. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true, too. It could be something that motivates, like New York State, where I'm from, I don't know that they have great high school programs or things like that. So maybe they'll like maybe then the recruiting starts a lot earlier or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it would help morale in the city. I mean, overall, I think the people still go crazy for teams here. It doesn't matter who's playing, but I think it would make it a more cheerful experience if everybody's like, these are my dudes. They're the dudes. I went to school with that guy. I don't know.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's very. Do you not like college sports then for that same reason, or is it because I feel like there's more people, even though they might not be from the state or the city or whatever, they end up adopting this sort of like college pride, and then they take that with them, and then they almost adopt that as like that's where they're from. Like Khalil Mack went to UB, University of Buffalo, and he's not from Buffalo in any way, but like Buffalo claims him as like one of their own.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all right with that. I like that. I mean, because you do have to be there for an extended period of time and go to school there, and like you make a life there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't know. When I see like the trades happening, and I used to I had season tickets for the Yankees because I was in New York.
Right.
And like we would bounce between New York City and New Jersey all the time because my criminal parents, but we would just bounce back and forth. So the Yankees were my team, I guess. It was,
sure.
This was before there were fucking breweries and ramen spots around it. Like now it's hip.
See, I've never been to Yankee Stadium in my life. I would like to go. Yeah, it's old or new, and I get the new one. I guess is what it was like across the street from the old one, right?
Yeah.
But so that whole area just must have got gentrified and all of that.
Yeah.
How much did season tickets cost when you bought them back in the day?
Dude, I mean, I didn't buy them. My dad bought them.
Sure,
but they were about like I think like $250, $300.
Oh my God, that's it. That's great. Now I wonder what they are now. It's probably like
thousands.
Yeah,
thousands for sure. And it's it's nice. It's fine. I preferred it felt dangerous to go to a fucking baseball game.
Sure.
And we would go all the time because we had the season ticket. So whenever we were, hey, there's nothing to do today, let's go to the game. They're like, okay, cool. And we would catch ball. I remember getting Anthony Pettis. Remember? No, he ended up becoming huge, but he was the rookie that year, and I remember him just like kind of practicing by our seats. So like, hey, can you sign a ball for me? And hopefully you get famous. And he did.
That's awesome.
I don't know where that fucking ball is, but I do remember. I remember him doing that.
Yeah, you still have the memory. That's the good thing.
Yeah, he was great. I remember in his starter year that I was just like, wow, this could good.
Yeah, I wonder where in New York. I know, well, like the stadium's in the Bronx, and now that's getting gentrified. And then I have friends who moved to like Spanish Harlem, and they're like, "Yeah, I love it here." I'm like, "What's the bad part of New York? Like, where do the poor people and the criminals live now?"
Yeah, that's a good question. Because I mean, that's what I grew up around, and I'm thankful that I'm out of that. I moved to LA, and
But even if you perhaps stayed, I mean, it seems like every community from Bushwick to beyond it's everything's like gotten so gentrified. I'm like, where do the poor people live? By the airport?
I don't know. They live here in LA. I'll tell you that. There's a dude right down the street. There's a Walgreens right by me next to the El Rey Theater. And there's a dude with like a whole living room setup. He's got a couch. He's got like plants. He's got a suit hanging on a tree. So I'm like, this dude's got his shit together.
It's for his job interviews. I saw it was on TikTok, but it was here in LA. It was out in Skid Row. And these people made like a home out of scaffolding, and it had 2 stories. Like, so they had like an upstairs and a downstairs.
Oh, with wheels on the bottom? I think I saw this.
Maybe, but the fact that they had like, in the joke in the TikTok was like, this is going for $1,800 right now in LA.
Hey man, I saw something like that. It was a 2-story and it was on wheels, so the guy could just, if he had to book it, cops are coming or something, he just fucking, all right, let's go, and just push it out.
I don't even know that the cops are allowed to do that. I was reading
depends on the area, I think. Depends on the area.
Like I was reading, Dr. Drew is big on the homeless stuff here. He's trying to do much to like reform it, to help them. And he says it's not like a housing issue the way that the government is going about it. It's more of a mental health and drug thing, so that they have to tackle it that way before that they can put the houses into place. But he was saying how like there like almost squatter laws or something like that. Like say a hobo like makes a ball of his own shit and like puts it on the ground next to his tent, and a cop comes up and tries to like take the ball of shit. He's like, he could be like, that's my property. You're not allowed to seize my ball of shit. That's my property.
I mean, I agree with half of that. I feel that, yes, we definitely need to approach it as a drug problem.
Oh, sure. No, I agree with, like I said, yeah, it's a mental health and drug thing, because here's the deal. Like LA is so beautiful weather-wise, as opposed to New York or whatever, where there's cold and bitter snow and things like that. And a lot of these folks, they're like, why would I live in your house when I can just live on the beach and do meth all day? I mean, why would I do that?
How do they get to meth with no job and no money? I mean, I guess panhandling and whatnot.
Panhandling and doing what they sell their little goods.
Meth is expensive, man. I don't know. That's a lot of money.
And they share it. I don't really understand either. But yeah, but when all your money, that's the other thing. They're like, well, why would I pay rent for this home that I don't even want to be at? The beach is beautiful. I live on the beach.
Well, they should instill some kind of property lines where like they have to charge them like ground rent.
You would think something. I don't know, but it's just it seems like the chicken before the egg to just build all these housing developments, and then the people that they are for, they're like, I don't want to fucking live in that.
Oh, they will. Oh, then they'll make the place fucking Thunderdome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Becomes like a massive Skid Row. It's insane.
Yeah, they're not conditioned to want to live into a home. So
yeah. Oh, what do you think? They're gonna start going to IKEA? No.
yeah, exactly.
Dude, so tell me, I've gotten to know you a little bit, hanging out at the store and just chatting and watching your show, the Josh Potter Show. Everyone, every Tuesday, tune in. But seeing you also on other people's podcasts, like Shank, I think you were on there recently.
Oh, yeah. I've done Sarah's podcast a whole bunch. She's done my podcast a whole bunch. Yeah. One of my favorites to podcast with, for sure. But yeah, she's great. I love her so much.
But I wanted to get to know you a little bit more. Like, what got you into comedy? Why was that path the one you chose?
I don't know. I always, like, growing up or whatever, I watch SNL, I'd watch late night talk shows and things like that. And I always just thought that looks like the most fun job. I never, ever considered it to be a job. I guess I did consider it to be a job. I just thought, like, I'll just do this. But I started in radio in high school, and I just somehow, like, I remember there was a morning show in our town. It was called the Shred and Reagan Show. And I was obsessed with it. I would listen to it every day on my way to school. And I remember just going, like, I want to be one of those guys, and not even Shred and Reagan, but like the other guy. They had, like, other guys on the show, like a third mic and like a stunt guy and stuff. And I thought, those guys are cool. That would be a cool job. I don't want to be like the host of the show, but I'd like to be like one of those other guys. And then I got an internship in sales through my school in like sophomore year. And I remember I just wrote an email to the producer of the Shred and Reagan Show. And I just said, I'm like, I'll do anything you want. Can I just come and intern for you or whatever? And they said yes. And like a couple of months went by, like a summer went by. And by the end of the summer, they hired me to be one of those guys on the show. And I thought, like, well, I did it. And that was like my life goal. And I was like 16 and I'm doing it. And then, like, I got the job. My high school was cool. They like let me shuffle my classes to the end of the day so that I could go do that every day. And then I started college and I hated it. Like, I was like, what am I doing here? I'm getting a communications degree and I already have a job. And I kind of was disillusioned with college, and I focused more on the radio stuff and ended up dropping out of college. And then I found myself at like 20, 21 going like, all right, I did this. Now, like, what's next here? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't realize that I capped my goals at a kind of a short-sighted one. You know what I mean? Like, I thought, like, well, here's my future. And then it's like, no, this is for now. But like, you got to kind of move on from this at some point. And through doing the radio, I started meeting like local comics around, and one of the comics I met was this guy Matt Bergman, who I actually do my podcast on Patreon with, and he knew I was like just funny from the radio, you know, like wouldn't have him on or whatever. He's like, why don't you do stand up? And so I go, I don't really know how to. I mean, I was like, I always thought about it. I love watching it. I love going to shows. And I have, you know, I watched it growing up and everything like that. And I've always wanted to try it, but I just didn't know what that entailed. You know what I mean? Like, where do you go to do that? And you just show up at the clubs or something. And there was really no club in Buffalo other than this shithole, like, sea room that was in the back of a restaurant.
Oosh.
And so, and there was no getting in there. That was for like old dudes from the 80s and shit, you know. They wouldn't have any headliner you ever heard of. There'd just be like a road dog who wears a blazer or whatever. And so he pointed out where these open mics were. And so I went, I did 2 of them. And this is like when I was like 22 years old. And I thought like, all right, I did 2. And then he booked me, my friend Matt booked me on this show he was doing at like a rock club. And he goes, come do 5 minutes. And I did 5 minutes and I fucking ate it so hard. Like there will never be like a bomb that feels that bad, because it was my first time in front of a real crowd where everybody killed. Like the rest of them have been doing comedy or whatever. And so they all killed and I ate it, and I knew it was on me. And I walked out into the alley afterwards and just puked my face off, because I was like, that's how much it hurt. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then I just didn't know. I'm like, I guess it's not for me or whatever. And I didn't get back on stage again for like 8 months. And I went to Europe. I had a bunch of bullshit happen. I lost sight in my eye a couple of years before that. So I was kind of already going crazy. So like this was like 2007, maybe like a year after I lost my eye, when I started doing the stand up. And I was on the midst of dropping out of college, and I ended up going to Europe. And in that 8-month interim of doing comedy, I went to Europe, and I had like this epiphany of like, when I go home, I have to do this like every day. I started like, you know, reading more, like listening to more comics talk about it. They're like, you have to get up every day. You have to do as much sets as possible. It's like a process. And I started like falling in love with the process of it more than just, you know, I understood like, oh, I have to bomb to like get better. So when I came back from that trip is when I started really like hitting it hard. And there was only one show in Buffalo at the time, every Tuesday night. And it was an open mic, but it was so like Buffalo had no club. So people would come to this open mic like a real show. It would be packed to the gills. There would be like 60 people at every like regular people at every show.
Nice.
So it was kind of like our Super Bowl. Every Tuesday I would like, my stomach would be like in knots, praying that I'd see my name on the list for the lineup. You know what I mean? And so I started doing that, like, and you know, it took about between 2008, 2012 doing that show. And then like whatever little mics would pop up around town, driving to Rochester, driving to Erie, Pennsylvania or whatever. But finally in like 2012, a club opened up in Buffalo, Helium, and that's like what really accelerated things. And you know, I got real work, and then I started getting better and better, working with actual comics, seeing how professionals operate and things like that, learning a ton about just how, you know, not even just being on stage works, but like just interacting with these people and being professional and all of that. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of how the timeline went as far as getting into it goes. Or at least getting started, yeah. But I thought radio was going to be my career for my whole life, and I did it up until I moved to LA in 2017, and I'm so glad I got like, I look back, I go, there is no regret in that decision to have left that job and come out here and like throw a Hail Mary, so to speak, you know.
Yeah, doing your own show. That there's, you know, we're also now able to do stuff like that. You know, we have the tools are easier to get.
Well, the medium have just changed. I mean, my podcast gets just as many listeners as that radio show did in its prime, but that was all in Buffalo. Like, to have that many listeners in Buffalo is a huge deal. I mean, that is like you can garner a lot of revenue advertising wise, but like to do that number and have it be globally is something completely different. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
what I always wanted to be on a nationally syndicated, like, you know, an Opie and Anthony, a Don and Mike, a Howard Stern, whatever, like to work on a nationally syndicated show. And now I kind of have my own, so to speak, if you think about it, because of the internet.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, and it can keep growing. I mean, it always grows
Sure, of
and
course.
expands. That's the beauty of this, you know, when you choose a path like this, because, you know, I'm not saying that I chose the path of comedy, but there's a lot of people that they don't choose the regular path of like, hey, let me go get a 9 to 5. Let me go work in an office, you know. And I know people like that are happy with life. They're like, this is what I want.
Oh,
I
I'm
want
so jealous of those people, like that they
yeah.
are like, well, this is the job that I have, and I've found satisfaction in the life outside of that job, and I don't need my job to be my like. And I saw my father hate his job his whole life, even though he
Mm-hmm.
was good at it. And I don't even know what my dad's like dreams are. I think my dad was thinking he was living his dreams because he was supposed to be like an engineer. He went to school for engineering, but he didn't speak English when he went to college, so he failed like biology or one of like he could do math and all of that stuff real easy because math is math, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Numbers are
numbers.
numbers.
Yeah.
But he failed like one of the science classes because he didn't speak good enough English. And
Where's he from?
he's from Egypt originally, but he is a Greek person, so he spoke Greek
Okay.
and some Arabic. But he yeah, so he failed, and like he started being a line cook at like a diner and found out he was like really great at it. And then he started getting promoted through, like he started running restaurants then and everything like that. And then he was like, well, I'm really good at running restaurants. So his dream was to like buy one day. And then he did. And he almost like killed himself running it. And then he
Jeez.
had to just like sell it. And he's like, I'm going back to just running someone else's restaurant. I'm not.
Less pressure, man. Less
Yeah,
pressure.
exactly. So and I grew up like my mom was a waitress and my dad was working in restaurants. So I just like I remember I said to myself, I'm like, I am never working in a fucking restaurant as long as I don't care if I'm destitute for a job. And I still haven't, like I haven't gone back on my word on that since I was 14. I haven't worked in a restaurant. So even if my dad even would yell at me, like when I worked in radio, he'd be like, you know, dishwashers make just as much money as you. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not doing it. They're also washing dishes. I'm like on the
Yeah.
radio. Like, what do I, you know, like what you can't compare. I'm wearing like ripped jeans to work and just hanging out and like getting to meet bands and stuff. Like, how can you compare that?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. You talk to people like that of different generations or different upbringings. Like I have a couple Cuban friends that are old school Cuban. You know, they have a job and they have a family and the whole thing. And they message me and ask me about what I'm doing, and I explain to them like I'm doing a podcast, I'm producing other people's shows, blah blah blah, and they don't get it. They're like, so, but like, what? Why are you doing that? I'm like, because it brings me joy. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sitting in an office makes me want to kill myself. That's it. That's all
Yeah,
it comes down
exactly.
to.
And I'll tell
Uh,
you, I mean, like the last job I had was here in LA when I first moved here. I moved like Tom Segura gave me a tour and he said, you can have this tour open up for me the whole way through if you move to LA. And at the time, my radio thing was like very stagnant. I was basically like Don Draper. Like they gave me so many jobs without extra pay that I was doing so much work they couldn't fire me, and I was like coming and going like Don Draper whenever the hell I wanted. Like I'd barely be there. I was going on the road on weekends, leaving on like Thursday and coming back on Monday, and they wouldn't even care. And they threatened to fire me a couple times. I'm like, okay, and they wouldn't do it. So I realized I pretty much could stay there until it got super grim, and it
yeah,
was comfortable, but it wasn't fulfilling any longer, and it was never going to like pay the bills as like it paid the bills, but it was like I lived in poverty. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Low bills.
yeah, yeah.
So, but like then I came here and I got an office job, and I remember I was working 40 hours a week doing something I didn't even know what I was doing. I went to like a job fair and sat at all these tables and I just interviewed and I got offered like 4 jobs and I just took like the office one because I thought it would be like the cherry one or whatever.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
couldn't
yeah.
even tell you to this day exactly what we were doing. We're like, it was medical billing or something like that. And it's something that has to do with that. I don't even know what it was. But then I I remember working like 40 hours a week, and then my paycheck would just be dog shit. And I was like, I could do one weekend on the road and make this money, and work one weekend on the road and have a blast. You know what I mean? And so it just made me have this perspective of that, and thank the Lord, things picked up in the podcasting department, because now it's like, I can't believe I make this much money doing this, and then I worked 40 hours a week in an office. Like now it makes my father go like, oh, I'm like, yeah, this was the goal all along. You know what I mean? Like I stuck it out for this,
Right. So, okay, you said Tom took you on the road, but how did that happen? How did you get, like, who called? Like, was that the first phone call that kind of, how did Tom Segura get a hold of you?
Oh no, I mean, I had worked with Tom for like up at that point when he offered me that. I had been working with him for like 5 years on the road, just here and there, whenever he wanted me to come out. Like when Helium opened up they opened up in like the weekend before New Year's of 2013. So like 2012, the weekend before Christmas was like their soft open. They were already giving me weekends and stuff like that. And as the year progressed, like that summer, Helium has a contest every year. I was unbeknownst to me at the time. Helium traditionally has like, Philly's funniest. And then at the time that was Buffalo, and now every club that they have, which is like Indianapolis, fucking Portland, St. Louis, they all have a local comic contest. And I fucking hate contests. I've never done a contest. I said to myself, I'll never do one of these arbitrary bullshit contests, like where it's like bringer based or whatever.
Yeah, like battle of the bands for like bands.
Yeah, and like Helium's is a little bit of a hybrid of like judges meets like fan vote or whatever, or like audience vote. And I did not want to do it. And the club straight up told me, they go, everyone has to do it or you don't work here for 6 months. So I go, all right, I'll fucking do it. So luckily, through being on the radio, I had a little bit of a draw. So like, and I think I was a better comic than pretty much majority of the comics at the time there, but there were some guys at the time that were better than me. So I didn't know how I'd fare. I just was like, I'm doing this just so I can keep fucking working here.
Yeah.
And in the first contest, I won it. And thank God, because I never had to do it again. And through winning it, they elevated me. Then because I was emceeing only primarily, and then I would fill in, like if they in a pinch needed a feature, they would throw me in there. But I hadn't started middling regularly at all. So now I was bumped up to middle, and then they were sending me off to like St. Louis or whatever. But through middling, my first ever like official middling weekend was with Tom, like just and it wasn't him like asking for me. It was at the time, like he was still papering rooms. He wasn't like, obviously he wasn't where he is now. He was like, his podcast was just starting to get a buzz. Some people would come out with like mom jeans or whatever. This is like 2013, maybe 2014. And yeah, we just did the weekend together. And I always say it's so funny. Like I've done weekends with guys where you leave it and you go, this is my fucking new best friend. You know what I mean? Like I can't, we had like 6 meals together. We hung out all day. We drove around. We had inside jokes, and then they leave and you get their number or whatever, they leave. And then you never hear from them ever again. And even when you text them, it's like, oh, is this guy just like, what happened? And then you have guys where you just make no connection with, and then that's fine or whatever. But Tom was somewhere in the middle. It was just like a nice weekend. Like we had fun. We had a good weekend or whatever. And then he DM'd me like a couple of days after the weekend had ended, and he goes, I'm doing the Orlando Improv. Do you want to come down and do that with me? And I was like, hell yeah. And at the time, I mean, like, again, he wasn't where he is now. It was like more or less kind of where I am now, where it's like, he's got some papered rooms. He's got some tickets sold. It's a little bit of a mix. And I remember I borrowed $300 from my mom to go and fly down to Orlando to go do those gigs. And then, I got the check and I had to give my mom $300 of my $500 back. But I mean, it was completely worth it. It was the first time I had like flown. Like usually I had to drive everywhere to do comedy. I'm like, I can't drive to Orlando. It's like a fucking 13-hour drive. So it was the first time I like flew on a plane to go do comedy, and I went down there. I did it with him, and then he was like, "Yeah, I got a couple other weekends if you want to come." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever you want." So I mean, like, we kind of did that little dance where he would invite me along for a few years, and eventually, his shit started fucking skyrocketing. He's starting to sell out the rooms and sell out the whole weekends. He's hitting his bonuses. So then he was like, "Hey, you don't have to pay for your plane tickets anymore, actually." And I was like, "This
Nah.
is sick." I remember telling my other comic friends, they're like, "Holy shit, I've never even heard of a headliner buying your plane tickets before. That's nuts."
Yeah,
And
that's
then,
that's nice.
then he elevated to theaters, and then he was on the theaters tours, and I opened up his second Netflix special, and then his third, and then when we did the 2017 deal, that was the third one, and then yeah, and then I did his fourth one too in 2019. But yeah, it just kept going, boop 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 boop. He kept skyrocketing and taking me to bigger venues and higher paying gigs, and it was wild. So then, yeah, by the time 2017 rolled around, when he offered me that tour, because I don't know if he was just, it was kind of like a kick in my ass. He was like, "So what are you're going to go to, you should," he just basically was kind of like, "When are you coming to LA?" That was how the conversation started. And I
Gotcha.
told
Yeah.
him, like, I wasn't even considering LA. I was like, I thought I was going to go to New York or whatever, but I needed to do something. It was like shit or get off the pot time.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Well, maybe you should think about LA. And, if you come to LA, I'll give you this tour. That way you'll be making some money. You can get your like feet planted or whatever." And so that was, I couldn't say no to that. I mean, that saying no to that would have been saying no to doing comedy.
Yeah. 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 That's a career maker for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was, and then obviously leaving a job that I had for 15 years was weird. Half my life, obviously, at that point, like my entire adult life and like half of my literal existence, I worked at the same radio show. So that was like kind of scary at first, but it also wasn't. Like, I remember I did leave that radio show one time to go get a job in Cleveland, and I remember that was like anxiety inducing and very scary and a very wrong move. And thankfully I didn't sign a contract there. And my other show, through all this weird corporate bullshit, like the company got sold, blah blah blah, they were like, "Where's this guy?" And they go, "Oh, he moved for a job in Cleveland." They said, "Well, how much is he making there? Can we get him back?" And so they matched my salary and brought me back like within a year, thank God, because I hated that job in Cleveland. But when Tom offered me this and I was leaving again, it actually felt like right to do, other than the fear of like, "Oh, I have to move across the fucking country. I don't really know anybody there." And
Yeah, it's hard to make friends, man. It's hard to make
it
friends,
sure is.
especially when you're older now. It's when you're a kid or a teenager, it seems easier for some reason. But
Yeah, I mean, you're thrown into these social settings, and that's what's great about comedy. That's the easiest part about making friends. I don't know how regular adults would do it, but like maybe through work or something like that. But meeting friends through comics and stuff like that, that really helps. And
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, COVID really threw. I mean, because I got here in the end of 2017, and then COVID hit, and I still felt kind of new here, and it totally put a wrench in my like social gains, if you will.
yeah. Fuck, are you gonna go to Texas, man? Because now didn't Tom move to Texas?
Yeah, there was that whole thing, but through their move to Texas and everything like that, they had to pare things down a little bit. So like he straight up just told me, he's like, "You can make money doing your podcast, and also you don't need to do it through us." And there was a lot of scheduling stuff, and he was putting into a lot of resources into it. And so he was like, "You could just do this on your own and make way more money." And then and like when it came to the Texas thing, he was like, "You could still move to Texas if you want." And I was like, I just moved here. I was just I have
Yeah,
things I want to finish. I have like unfinished business here in my eyes. I also just didn't want to disrupt my podcast any more than I already had,
have
because
yeah,
I was, shifting producer, shifting a studio. That already, I did that somehow without missing a one episode. And
nice.
um if I would have moved to Texas, it would have thrown a whole other like wrench in that kind of works, you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I have no plans of moving there. down the road, couple of years down the road, I might, I could see myself moving to another part of the country, but I don't know if it would be Texas, or sometimes I think like maybe I can go back home and do what I do. But, for now I do like LA, and I'm just sticking it out.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I'm the same way. I moved here maybe 5 years ago, and I'm stoked still that I'm here. Like,
Yeah.
it makes me very happy. And when everybody started moving to Texas, because I was coming to the store every week, hanging out with Tony at the Kill Tony show.
Sure.
And I would bring out like, Peanut from 311, or, anybody that was on my show, I would just bring them to the store and then, hang out with people and make shit happen. But when they left, Tony's like, you need to go to Texas. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to Texas, dude. That's too much. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
To maybe, hopefully it works out. Like, no, it's working out here now.
I don't think it would be necessarily a terrible thing. Like I know Tony and Red Band and obviously Tom and all the people that moved would be very welcoming and nice. I mean, they were when I moved to LA, and that's the thing that like kind of freaked me out at first. Like literally every comic that had initially, like Red Band was putting me on Ice House shows. Tony had me judge Kill Tony. Like first time my name was ever on the fucking first and only time so far my name was ever on the marquee at the Comedy Store, which is crazy. And that was because of Tony in like 2019. And Tom obviously has changed my life. And even like I had just met Rogan before pandemic and stuff like that, and he was talking about me on his podcast. So I was like, a part of me was like, I felt like I was left, like the spaceship left and I was stuck here for a little bit. I did have that mentality. But at the same time, I was like, I'm just gonna fucking stick this out, and like I need to like put myself into other universes and stuff like that. And Texas will always be, I can always go down there and do shows and hang out and do whatever. So I don't need to live there to do that. It's not a far place. So, I am happy that I stayed, and now things are starting to come back, and it's making me more happy that I stayed even.
Yeah, absolutely. The nights are getting better at the store. The rooms are starting to feel better. They're starting to feel like it was
Yeah,
before.
Exactly. It's packed. People are coming out and
laughing, which
celebrities are coming again and all that whole thing. So
yeah, it's fun, man. I mean, I wanted to ask you, do you have any post depression when it comes to having one of those nights, like that night that Tom asked you to move to LA? It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
When you get these big nights that are like, wow, this is crazy. The celebrity walked in, I got this opportunity, all this shit. And then there's like always a period after that, like 3 or 4 days of just like, now what?
Well, yeah, the most depressed I ever was, and it's so weird to say because it was like one of the best gigs I ever did. I had lived in LA for 2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe, and Tom was performing at the Wiltern, and I opened up for him at the Wiltern. And I remember like leaving that show and coming back to my shitty ass apartment and just going like, tomorrow I have to go to open mics. Like, I did the venue, and like none of those people will ever relate. I can't walk into that open mic and be like, I did the Wiltern last night and now I'm like depressed. Like they're all like,
fuck you, you did the Wiltern.
Yeah, exactly. Literally 99.9% of those people will never do that. Do you know what I mean? So it's just like, and then you think in your head, you're like, maybe I mean, there's a great chance that I'll never do that again. And so you're like, well, I did it 2 weeks living here, 2 weeks into living here, and now like I have to scratch and claw for the rest of my life, conceivably, to get back to that place. Like I had like 3 days where I couldn't get out of bed after that. I was like, did I just peak in 2 weeks into living here?
Yeah, that's a very real thing, man. It's unfortunate, and I've experienced it a lot here in LA. Like I've always been in that aspect of life. I've always been good where like crazy shit happens. Like when I got into the beer industry, it was like that. I literally sat down to have food with my wife, and she wasn't my wife at the time, but we were just having a meal out, and I saw the dude that was selling beer to the bar wearing like a beer shirt, and he had a cooler, and I'm like, hey man, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I sell beer. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. Like, I just go to bars all day and drink. And I'm like, what? I want that job. How do I get that? And like, he gave me his card. I made a call, whatever. And immediately my whole life changed. Like now I'm in the beer industry. Now I'm traveling to every state doing these massive beer festivals, and I don't understand how it happened, but every time after one of those big ass festivals or like, some massive thing would happen, I would lay in bed and just be like, oh my God, like now what are we going to do? Like I'm going to be, if I continue this lifestyle that we have, like I don't know what to call it because it's multiple things, like you do stand up, but you're doing broadcasting and I'm sure, if somebody offered you an acting role, you would probably jump in.
Yeah, I might be able to. I have no idea. I've never done that. It's so weird. I'm so like outside of show business. I don't even think about those. I mean, if someone said something to me, I'd be like, I'll entertain that idea, but I'd be like skeptical about it. I'd be like, it can't be that good of a project if they're coming after me. You know what I mean? But like, I get that same way after, I'll go do a road weekend and, now I've done hundreds, if not even thousands by this point, being in this for 12, 13 years. And I still get melancholy at the end of all of them because I'm like, is that going to be the last one ever? Like, and then you look at your calendar and you get nervous. You're like, ooh, it's looking a little empty down this way over here. And you're just like, get a little nervous about that. So like, yeah, it's peaks and valleys. It's very bipolar, to be honest with you. Cause I mean, like, I'll be on a fucking high where I think I'm like the shit. And then like, a fucking month later, I'm like, I am a hack. I suck. I have no new thoughts. Like, it is just.
I have nothing else to say.
Yeah, there's like, is the well run dry? There's all kinds of stuff like that, ebbs and flows, and you just try to keep a balance going.
Yeah, and that's another. That's a big problem in the comedy community. We've lost comedians to that. The sadness. The suicides and the depression, so it's tough. And on top of that, it's tough because you're in LA and like we were talking, like it's hard to make friends out here. You make acquaintances, you meet people.
And, dude, it is so like I hate coming home. Well, I love doing the road, even if I'm alone. Like when you're alone, you're doing the road. There's still some sort of euphoria where you're like, I can't believe this is my life.
Yeah.
This is my job. I'm in a nice hotel. Blah blah blah. But being on the road alone isn't as fun as being on the road with like other people. And that's why I still go out with like Annie. I'll go out with whoever. Well, I mean, not whoever. It's if I like the person, obviously.
Yeah.
But I have no ego about like opening up a show. I do not care. I'm not like, I'm a headliner now. Like, yeah, I get headlining gigs, but like, I don't mind going with Annie, or I just went out with Bert, which was like, that's like being an astronaut. I mean, how many people get to do a tour like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it was like a trip to the moon. And I'll do that shit forever because, unless my work is getting so, what's the word? Like my calendar's getting so full or whatever that I don't have to do those things. But I love going out with other people and just getting to spend time with them because it makes it so much less lonely. You have so much more fun. And then coming home, it's fucking brutal sometimes. You know what I mean? Like I'll come home and just crash for like 3 days or 2 days because I just can't even like. I'm like, what am I even gonna do anyway? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I miss like, and it's like growing up in Buffalo and like not even just growing up, but being an adult there. I lived there for 31 years of my life, and you make relationships and friends. I told myself when I came here, I was like, well, you can't expect to have that kind of connection or relationship with anybody here because you've been here for 3 seconds, and there's just no chance. Like your best friend that you knew since 2nd grade. You can't compare a friendship like that to anything that you're going to have here. You know what I mean? So you just have to kind of accept people as they come into your life and see how they are and see how it can grow. But it was shitty to like, I don't have a guy where I could be like, hey man, you want to watch like a hockey game later and go drink beers or whatever at the bar or whatever. So you miss that kind of thing, and then the people that you do have like that in your life are like, I don't even want to fucking hang out with this fucking guy.
It's like forced. Like I have some friends that are like, hey, we're gonna go to this event, like this concert. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, all right, you're like, I would love to. There was one guy who invited me to a Laker game and he had box seats, and I was like, well, I have to do that, but I was like,
Yeah.
I can't. I was like, that sounds like so much fun, but I have to hang out with this guy. I was like, you know. And so that's like the fucking give and take of it all, I suppose,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, you know, dude, I'm glad we're talking about this. It really does. That is an issue that I deal with a lot. Like you know, since I moved here, and I also had such a strong group where I came from. I came from Miami. Well, I was born in New Jersey, and then around when I was 15, I moved to Miami, and I was there for like 20 something years. And I made, you know, we had a band that I was in for like 10 years, and that was like my core group, like the band, and meeting up for practice, and I, you know, hanging out whenever I needed to hang out. Like I could just call one of them, like, what are you doing? Like, hey, let's go to the movies. Okay. And then, you know, that was a group thing. And then moving out to LA, it's like there's people that, you know, I'm like, hey, you want to go see the fucking new Jackass or something? Because I don't want to go alone. That's the saddest thing ever.
Oh, see, I've been going to movies alone forever, and that's why. I mean, I think it was Christina who told me this, like Christina Pajitsky, like when I first moved here, she goes, try not to like isolate yourself, because I have that tendency regardless of the situation of having no friends around, because I do go to movies alone. I don't mind going to things alone at all. I go to bars alone. I go to movies alone. I don't go to like nightclubs alone, but you know what I mean? Like dive bars. I'll just show up and just post up at the bar and watch fucking whatever's on the television, you know, Sports Center or a fucking basketball game or whatever. And she was like, try not to isolate yourself. And I really didn't. I should have listened more. I did listen, but it was like I didn't practice what I preached, and I definitely spent the first. But I love going to movies alone. I don't know what it is. It's because like you're not talking to anyone at a movie. Movies in groups always bugged me back in high school.
Okay.
I was like, I just want to watch this, and I got fucking Jeff and Lindsay over here making out, and someone over here talking. I was like, I'll just go by myself.
I guess it depends on the movie too. Like the movie like Jackass, I feel is one of those
that's a good group
like
movie,
a rambunctious. Right. Everybody's drunk, you know.
Yes, that's a good group movie because then you're like laughing. One of the best like group movie experiences I had was like Austin Powers, the sequel, the second one. I just remember we weren't even high, we weren't even like doing drugs, but me and my friends were just laugh. I've never like laughed that hard in a movie theater in my life. Same with Jackass. I haven't seen the new one, but I mean like going to it back in the day. I just remember like howling, laughing out loud. It was crazy.
Yeah. I remember, which one was the other one? Liar Liar from Jim Carrey made me like fall out of my seat. Like, I was insane. I couldn't contain myself. I just fell over.
Oh yeah. Me and my father, the first like memory of going to a movie where we both laughed at it together was Ace Ventura. When the first one came out, Pet Detective, and I was obsessed with that. That made me like want to be in comedy for sure, even though I'm nothing like Jim Carrey in any capacity whatsoever, style-wise.
It's so rough watching people like go up and do open mics and they're trying to be Ace Ventura
or just whomever, you know. It's rough watching any I feel physical comedian or like some guy who's doing act outs at an open mic, because it's like they put if they don't get a laugh, they
keep going until something happens.
Well, it's just like they put so much effort. They're like, you catch them like breathing, like after it, you know, and they're just getting no laughs. They're like, you just did all that, you fell on the ground for nothing.
Yeah. Fuck.
That sucks.
Ugh. That's one of the things that appealed most to me about shows like Roast Battle or like The Kill Tony. You know, watching these people go up, and it's just the worst thing I've ever seen, you know?
Yeah, I love Kill Tony because it's like, obviously it's the gimmick of the podcast. It's like for a show, it's very fun. They do a great job with it. The roast battle thing, I never could get on board with as a spectator or as somebody to like, you know, I had the like, you should do roast battle. I'm like, well, why? I'm not going to write jokes about this other person nobody knows. Two people who nobody knows wasting time writing jokes about each other. Like, A, no one in the crowd cares who we are, and B, it's just like for fodder for the judges to like rip on us after. I was like, I'll just write jokes and try and get up that way. You know what I mean? So I just always avoided the whole scene as far as the roast battle thing goes. And I know many comics who spend way too much time, I feel like, thinking about it, or like obsessing over the roast battle. And I know some people who have obviously come out of it with careers, but again, it's like that it's a microcosm. It's like how many 95% of them do nothing ever again. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And you just wasted all this energy. Like,
or they'll just do battles forever. They'll do like 5 battles,
exactly.
6
battles.
And
they think they're like, I'm killing it. Like, and you're like, go write 5 minutes, please.
Yeah. It's interesting to me. I like the battle only because it brings me back to my youth, and Cubans like to roast each other.
Sure.
They call it something else. They call it Cuero, which means leather.
Mm.
I don't know why it's called leather, but that's what they call it. And but it's like a thing, since you're little, you're just making fun of each other and fucking ribbing each other, and it's in part of the wrestling community too.
Sure.
Which, but yeah, I wouldn't want to pursue that as like my main avenue of
focus.
Like I can't. No.
I always like the old like Dean Martin roast, or like even the Comedy Central ones and things like that. I understood when it was a famous person, and then you have all these other famous people shitting on each other. That's entertaining. I never understood a bunch of, and this isn't to like disparage them, it's just the fact that like I don't know who these fucking people are, and so I don't care. They're like, Jeff is known to be a bit of, and I'm like, is he? I don't know. Who cares? You know what I mean? Like,
to be.
You know what I'm saying? Like they have to go in with these wild, like out of left field setups that, I just don't get invested in the people that I'm watching. But there are some people, like I said, that are very talented at it. I remember like Dina Hashem, they did not roast. I don't know if it was roast battle or whatever the fuck they called it in New York, the New York version. Louis J. Gomez used to run, but there's a great clip out there around the world, viral clip of Dina Hashem roasting a guy, and she had some of the best roast jokes I've ever heard, and it was about some guy nobody's ever heard of, and it made me laugh. So I'm like, there are people that obviously are, but she's an amazing writer outside of that. She can go do a fucking 30 45 minute set of regular jokes, and they'd all be electric as well. So
yeah, I mean, there's a difference if you're putting in work to have a set or something like that, or actually writing, compared to just I'm going to focus only on roast battling.
Yeah, it's the same kind of
thing.
It's the same thing as people who get like so into their open mic scene that they don't see beyond it any longer, and they're just kind of so embroiled in it that they're not going to ever leave that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like indie bands that don't push. They don't, like small independent bands that don't go out and flyer or don't go to other shows to kind of talk to people and like make connections. Like they just get stuck playing in their fucking garage.
And then they have drama with the other people in their clique or whatever. Scene, their little mic scene. So that kind of shit always seemed short-sighted to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the little goals. I wanted to go back to that because like these people don't establish like growth, right? And you did that with your small goals. Like you had
I've always had small goals.
Yeah, like you were saying, like, oh, you reached your first goal when you were what, 16, 18. So
yes, in terms of comedy too, I made it small. Like I would say, I got to get 5 minutes that are good, and that was all I cared about. I didn't care where I did it or what. I just need to know like this 5 minutes is gonna work everywhere.
Yeah.
And then I did that. I go, now I need 10 minutes, and then I built 10 minutes, and then it was like, now I want to start like emceeing. And so I would MC, and then it was like, now I want a middle. And it was always just like little incremental things. It was never like, and people would be like, well, what's the end game? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just trying to like get better at this at every little level that I can.
The end game is death.
Yeah. I mean, that's
so I'm just going to keep growing
I would say.
Till that.
I was like, well, I'm going to do this until I die. If I fail, I die, and I failed, but I know I tried it.
Yeah.
And if I make it, I make it. That's a cherry on top. And literally everything has been in the last couple of years a cherry on top. And it's making me now go like, well, I have to come up with like other little goals, because I never thought I would get to this point. I don't even know what the next goal would be sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Other than just like maintaining, I guess, or like keeping it going. And then, that becomes a new sort. I never had to worry about like keeping it going before, because there was nothing to keep going. It was like so easy to just kind of like do it as it comes and take things as it came your way. But now I'm like, I got to keep this going, and that's, I guess, the new small goal.
Yeah, there's that, and thinking about what's next too. Like, where do you want the Josh Potter show to go in terms of growth?
Right.
Do you want to do it live? Do you want to do
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So I guess that's, put little things like that. And I mean, I'm not telling you what to do. Like,
No,
you're already doing
right.
that. You know what I mean? But those people that we were talking about, the open micers, like they don't do that. They hit those goals of like, I want to do an open mic. They do it and they're like, cool, I did it. And then just hang out.
They'll say things are like, I want to be passed at the Comedy Store. And you go like, okay, what are you doing to accomplish that other than showing up to this open mic every couple of days? And
yeah, that's a massive goal. Like that's a stretch goal.
Yeah, that's exactly, that's a dream. You know what I mean? That's like, you're saying your dreams and like, cool. That's cool to have too. It's cool to have those things. Like I want to be on like there would be comics who would be like, I want to be on the Tonight Show, or I want to, and you're like, all right, great. But you're right now at a bar show and there's no scouts here. So like, what's your, strategy to get to that point?
Yeah. Now that you mentioned that, it was kind of sad that those night shows aren't really featuring comedians like they used to. Like before, that was the thing, right?
You want to get Carson. Never hear about it.
Yeah, well, there's that too.
Their audiences have been so fractured. It doesn't really mean the same. Like that used to, as a kid growing up or whatever, and as an early comic, that was obviously my goal as well. I was like, oh man, to get on Letterman, holy shit! Like not even a goal, dream or whatever. And I couldn't, like, now if they came to me, I'd probably do it, but they definitely wouldn't. I mean, none of the jokes, none of it would translate to that medium, like network television. Whoever is watching that isn't going to enjoy me. And it's just, it doesn't even do any, like, I could go on Tiger Belly, or I could go on Your Mom's House, or I could go on, a myriad of podcasts and get so much more exposure and actually gain more fans than I ever would doing 5 minutes on James Corden or Jimmy Fallon or whatever. And I know tons of comics who have done those things a handful of times and have seen nothing. They're not selling any tickets. They're not like, you know what I mean? So it just doesn't mean what it used to mean. I mean, now you go on Rogan, that's the new Carson. I mean, Carson had an audience of 12 million viewers every night. That's why when he would have a comic on, they'd wake up and be a household name. And the same thing kind of goes for Joe Rogan when he has a person on. So many people are watching that a comic will sell out his whole calendar at that point, Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting that's what it's become, and it's with bands too. Like certain bands will perform on these new Tonight shows, and it doesn't matter. You catch it maybe on YouTube. I
didn't even know they had bands still. The same thing with like SNL. It's like, I mean, on SNL, it's like they're not trying to break out artists, but I remember they used to. There would be a band that had a new album out, and they'd go on. It'd be like, some rock band that just had their debut album, and they'd go on Letterman, or they'd go on like Letterman.
Like
always
Deftones.
Letterman always had sweet bands. I remember like he always had cool bands, and it would be like new bands. And I used to do like a new music show on that radio station that I worked on Sunday nights, and I would be like, oh my god, I can't believe Letterman's having on like this indie band right now. It's crazy. But I just don't even see now. They're so desperate to get an audience, like they have like Dua Lipa or whatever. If they have anybody at all, it's got to be a big star to draw eyeballs, because they're desperately seeking that at this point.
Yeah, I think Kimmel's the one doing it best, because he does it in the parking lot and actually has a stage.
Oh yeah, he used to do. I remember in 2007 when Motley Crue reunited. I got to come here, like do a press thing and come here, and they reunited for the first time on Kimmel, and then they did a thing. It was off of Hollywood Boulevard, a separate venue from where he taped the show, and they played like 2 songs or whatever, and it was taped for Kimmel that night. And I remember my like friends froze me on the screen, and they could see me down in the front row of it. It was pretty wild.
Nice. Yeah, I remember I flew out here before when I was still living in Florida. I flew out here for like a family Thanksgiving thing, and went by. I was just walking by the Kimmel parking lot, and I saw security guards. There's a few people lined up. I'm like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, oh, there's a concert here later. I'm like, oh, okay. What time? He's like, oh, it's at 7, and it was like 4:00. And I was like, all right, well, I'm in town from Miami for this, that, and the other. How do I get in? He's like, just go in. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't have a ticket or anything. He's like, yeah, it's fine. Just go in. And I walked in and just stood there by the barricade waiting to see what this concert is. And it was Marilyn Manson.
Nice.
Yeah. Monica Lewinsky was there.
That's crazy. I'd love to meet her. I was gonna ask you though, is it the parking lot? Because now that I'm like now that I like know the area through living here, back
Yeah.
then obviously 2017, fucking 13 years ago or whatever, I had no bearings of anything, but I knew it was off of Hollywood Boulevard. Is it near like Cafe Hotel?
I think so.
Like
It
down
sounds
that street
familiar.
or whatever. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what because I walk by that. I've seen concerts going on in that parking lot, and I was always like, huh,
Yeah, that's
is that the
Kimmel.
same one? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, dude. So I want to wrap up soon because
Sure.
usually you just do like an hour.
Okay.
But I wanted to ask your thoughts on. I mean, are you interested at all in this new Batman movie?
I am actually quite interested. That was going to say earlier when we were talking about going to movies alone. That is a movie that I will definitely go to alone.
Yeah, yeah. That's a watch it by yourself thing.
I haven't gone to a movie since The Joker.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
Like
I'm
I
trying to
haven't
think when
to
my
a
last one
theater.
was.
I haven't gone to a theater. It was 20 yeah, that was 2019, November 2019 when I saw The Joker. I saw it in Berlin with Tom actually. That was the last time
Nice.
I went to the movies.
God, that movie was depressing.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm excited. I mean, I don't like superhero stuff at all, but I love Batman stuff, and I loved like when I was a little kid, I liked the Joel Schumacher ones, even though everyone shits on them. But being a little kid, they were like colorful and they were exciting, and I loved. Obviously, we talked about Jim Carrey and him being the Riddler was like
Oh yeah, that was so
the
cool.
epitome to me. And I'm kind of nervous about Paul Dano being, but I love Paul Dano. He is like one of my favorite actors. So, and I know this one's going to be like a gritty or dark one. So I'm excited to see what they do
They're
with it.
comparing it to Seven.
Oh man, that's going to be fun.
Yeah,
I think
like
that's
it's a mystery.
I'm into that. Yeah. So I always love, and I love the Christopher Nolan ones. Obviously, like
Yeah,
being an adult, the Dark Knight was amazing. I don't, people shit on Dark Knight Rises or whatever, but I thought that one was
I liked it.
great too. Yeah. So I'm excited to see this one. I like that they did Robert Pattinson because I know he's a great actor, and I like the fact that like, Batman's supposed to be like a detective. You know what I'm saying? Like who has wealth beyond all our imaginations and can buy all the gizmos and gadgets and stuff like that. He's not supposed to be like some fucking Superman, you know what I mean? And then when they did the thing with Ben Affleck, I just couldn't. I was like, not.
Yeah, I didn't like Ben Affleck's Bat at
Yeah, I mean,
all.
Ben Affleck could have been a Batman, like maybe, but like the way that they did it, he was like shooting people. It's like Batman doesn't shoot people. Batman doesn't
Yeah,
use
a
guns.
lot of
That's like
people died in those movies.
that's the whole point of Batman is he doesn't use guns. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't try to kill people. So that was all very weird to me, but this is like more back to him being like a detective and like I like the whole like him figuring things out, like building stuff and
I'm having a hard time with Pattinson. I'm just gonna say it.
oh sure, no, I get why. I mean, like the Twilight stuff or whatever, but like if you
Even
watch
that,
him,
like
have you
people, yeah, I saw him in The Lighthouse. I saw
okay,
him in
yeah.
Good Time. Like I put the effort in because when he got the casting news went around, I'm like, no. And my friends like, you got to see his indie movies. I'm like, fine, I'll give him a shot. But no, I still don't.
It'll be
I
interesting
don't.
because like, would you have said the same thing about Heath Ledger, like knowing he was in like A Knight's Tale and like 10 Things I Hate About You?
I was aware of when they did the casting. I was like, yeah, that's a weird one. But then when I saw him in the makeup, it made sense to me. Like when I saw him in full gear, I was like, okay. But when I saw Pattinson in full gear, I can't get with the design of the cowl. It looks like he's got a massive forehead.
Well, yeah,
the ears are back here.
I feel like it's one of those things where, like, you remember in Daredevil season 1 where he had like the shitty costume and then he eventually like got the real
Upgrades.
one.
You think the
end?
movie? That's how the movie ends.
think-
Has the new suit?
Yeah, because he's gonna have like they're gonna do sequels of this, so it's like the first suit's gonna be nonsense. Even in I want to say, Batman Begins, he had like a shitty mask at first or whatever. Christian Bale.
Yeah.
When Christian Bale was Batman at first, I was like, Christian Bale's not even American. I'm like, doesn't he have an accent? And then he was fantastic, obviously, but
yeah.
I also thought he was like skinny. I'm like Christian Bale, but I think Pattinson's like gonna surprise people. Like when I saw it, I go, I get it. You know what I mean? Like I get why people are skeptical.
Yeah.
But I like the like idea of like a young, thin Batman, and like I think in the next movie he's gonna like bulk up a little bit, and it's gonna be a little bit of a different.
Or leave him skinny and put him up against the skinny ass Joaquin Phoenix Joker.
People are speculating that these two worlds will collide at some point, but the age difference is
Yeah.
There's something fucked up in the timeline because the Joker was like in the 70s. I don't know when this Batman takes place. Is it supposed to be the 70s too, or is it like?
No, I don't know. Yeah, I don't
So
know.
it's like, yeah, that's where it gets weird. And then they showed like Joaquin Phoenix approaching Bruce Wayne's home. Remember when he like walks up to the gate and is like talking to Bruce
and
Wayne?
He's a little kid. Yeah, yeah.
And he's a little kid, but like Joaquin Phoenix is like fucking 35, 40 or whatever, however old he's supposed to be in that thing. It's like, so the Joker was like in his 60s when Batman was like in it. It doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I mean, they could play off an older, kind of crazy or just like dementia-ridden fucking Joker. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure. No, of course. I never expected the age gap between the Joker and Batman to be that vast. You know?
Yeah,
I mean?
that was weird. That was a weird choice.
Make Batman like a 12-year-old or something at least. He was like 6 or something. That was weird.
Yeah, that's weird.
But people are, I mean, not to nerd out on that, but like people were speculating that Joaquin Phoenix wasn't the Joker. He just spurred this sort of catalyst. Thing. Someone was inspired by his anarchy and became the Joker through that. But I don't like that theory. I would rather it just be Joaquin Phoenix. He looked great.
Yeah, I don't like that. They do that. That seems like a way to be able to fill that role later. You know,
that's what I feel like. That's what's the word? Like a little thing in their back pocket, just in case Joaquin Phoenix never wants to do it again. Basically.
Exactly. Yeah, or they can't afford it. You know.
Right. Exactly.
Well, hey, dude, I appreciate you. I wanted to ask you about your writing process, but I mean, we'll maybe do another one of these.
Well, I'll tell you a quick answer to that real fast. It's there really isn't one.
So you don't use Post-it notes.
I just no, I'll tell you flat out. I just I have to have like moments of inspiration or whatever. And I was before COVID doing so well at like every week I'd have a new joke or something, and I'd be working at turning the wrenches. Since COVID, I've been a little stagnant, but it's the light bulbs are starting to turn on again. So, yeah, that's all there is to it. I don't have a great process. I couldn't give anybody great advice as far as that goes.
All right. I mean, for me, the way I do it is when it pops in my head, I'll just throw it on one of these and then eventually piece it together, you know?
Yeah, it really comes together on finding the beats on the stage mostly. But, writing the thoughts down are great, obviously. You have to have that initial sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, dude, thank you so much for hanging out. I'm hoping to see you around town more. But
yeah, for sure. We'll see you at the store for sure.
Yeah. And anybody that is watching and listening, where can they find you online?
Just go check out the YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/The Josh Potter Show. Also, Instagram is @Josh_Potter. And in there, the bio has all the links to everything: shows, Twitch, YouTube, Patreon, whatever you want to involve yourself in. And same with Twitter @J_Potter. The links are all in the bio on there too. So you can find it all simply by going in Google as well. So I'm up there. Look for me on the internet.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. And yeah, dude, take care.
Thank you, dude. Appreciate you having me.